Today we are going to discuss about the fetal circulation. Fetal circulation or fetoplacental circulation. Fetal circulation is also referred to as prenatal circulation because this is the circulation that is happening during the prenatal period. And is this circulation same as that in the postnatal period? No, there are many structural differences during the prenatal circulation and the postnatal circulation. So in this topic, in this video, we are going to mainly discuss about the circulation during the prenatal period or in the fetus and what are the structures that are involved in the circulation during the fetal life. So the fetal circulation or the fetoplacental circulation, it includes the efforts of umbilical cord, the blood vessels within the placenta that carry the fetal blood. So here we can find the involvement of umbilical cord, blood vessels and the placenta that carries the fetal blood. And the lungs are not involved in this type of circulation. This is the main difference that we see in the prenatal circulation and the postnatal circulation. In the postnatal circulation or in an adult human body or even after just the birth of the baby, when the normal circulation starts, the lungs are actively involved in the process of circulation. They have a very important responsibility of carrying out the oxygenation of the blood. But here the lungs are not involved. The fetus obtains its oxygen and nutrients from the mother through the placenta and the umbilical cord. So this was just an introduction about the fetoplacental circulation. Now we are going to understand about this fetoplacental circulation, and here we are going to take the help of a flow chart, because when we will be understanding that flow chart, it will be easy to remember all these steps of the circulation. So this is the fetal circulation. This picture many a times we all see whenever we study about the fetal circulation in any book or from any source. This is a very commonly seen picture, but this is very difficult to understand that what kind of circulation is taking place among these chambers. These points we are going to discuss here in a very simple way. So right now I am not explaining the picture, but first of all, for understanding the fetal circulation, what we need to understand is the structures involved in the fetal circulation. So the first structure that is involved is placenta and the umbilical cord. Then second is the blood vessels in the umbilical cord. Third is foramen ovale. Fourth, ductus arteriosus. Fifth, ductus venosus. These are the structures that are different from the postnatal circulation. All these structures you will never find in a postnatal or adult human body circulation, but these are found in the fetal circulation. So before going to the fetal circulation, first of all we need to understand about these structures. So we will be dealing with them one by one. This is the picture of the placenta and the umbilical cord. Here you can see this is the placenta. Placenta is performing many functions: the respiratory function, the nutritive functions, the support for the fetus. All these functions are performed by the placenta. Then it is covered by two layers, amnion and chorion, and from the placenta comes out your umbilical cord. This is the umbilical cord, which is covered by the Wharton's jelly, and this is the whole structure of the placenta and the umbilical cord. Then when we take a cross section of the umbilical cord, we can easily find the blood vessels in the umbilical cord. See here, this is the cross section of umbilical cord. Here the two vessels are the umbilical arteries, and this one, the red in color, is the umbilical vein. Normally what we see is the arteries carry oxygenated blood and the veins carry deoxygenated blood. But there are two exceptions in the body. One is the umbilical artery, which carry the deoxygenated blood, and the other one is the pulmonary artery, which also carries deoxygenated blood. The pulmonary arteries are seen in the postnatal circulation, and this umbilical arteries play their role in the prenatal circulation. Then similarly, the vein which usually carry deoxygenated blood, but here in the fetal circulation, the umbilical vein is the vein or the blood vessel that carries the oxygenated blood. So this is the main thing that you need to always keep in mind while studying about the fetal circulation, that there is only one umbilical vein in the umbilical cord that carries oxygenated blood, and there are two umbilical arteries in the umbilical cord which carry the deoxygenated blood. Now the third structure that we are going to look upon is the foramen ovale. Foramen means an opening. So this foramen ovale is a opening between the right atrium and the left atrium. This is the structure of the heart. Here you can see the four chambers of the heart. This one is the right atrium, this is the right ventricle, this is the left atrium, and this one is the left ventricle. The right side of the heart mainly contains the deoxygenated blood, whereas the left side of the heart contains the oxygenated blood. During the fetal life, during the prenatal period, there is an opening between the right atrium and the left atrium, which allows the blood coming through the inferior vena cava and the superior vena cava to bypass the pulmonary circulation and directly enter into the systemic circulation through the left atrium. So this opening that you are seeing here is known as foramen ovale, and this is playing a very important role in the fetal circulation. You can see the arrows pointing both ways. It means that the blood can either shift from the right atrium to the left atrium or can also come from the left atrium to the right atrium. But the main thing to remember is the pressure in the right side of the heart is more than the left side of the heart. Therefore, the movement of the blood is mainly from the right atrium to the left atrium. So this opening is known as foramen ovale. This was the third structure that was to be discussed for understanding the fetal circulation. Now we are coming on to the fourth structure, that is ductus arteriosus. The meaning of ductus arteriosus is a connection between the two arteries. Arteriosus means arteries, and ductus arteriosus represents a connection or a shunt between the two arteries. So if you see here, this one is the pulmonary artery. This is coming out from the right ventricle, and this is the pulmonary artery, whereas this is the aorta. This is coming out from the left ventricle, and this is aorta. And you can see here the arrow pointing in this area. This area represents the ductus arteriosus. This is the area where both the arteries, the aorta and the pulmonary artery, are forming a connection, and this connection is known as ductus arteriosus. Here patent ductus is written. This is written, patent means open. If this is the heart of a adult human being, then this ductus arteriosus must be closed. Normally the ductus arteriosus closes after the birth, but when this remains open, this condition is known as patent ductus arteriosus. But when we have to study about the fetal circulation, then this condition will be considered as normal. So this is the ductus arteriosus, that is an opening between two arteries, the pulmonary arteries and the aorta. Then the next structure, the fifth structure which we need to discuss is the ductus venosus. As the ductus arteriosus meant the connection between two arteries, here the ductus venosus means the connection between two veins. Now we have to see that which are those two veins which are connected. So if you see here, this light blue color vein is the umbilical vein. The umbilical vein is coming, this is the liver, and one part of the umbilical vein is supplying the blood to the left portal vein, whereas the other part is forming a connection with the inferior vena cava. This one is the inferior vena cava, this is your umbilical vein, and here this is the connection between the two veins. umbilical vein and the inferior vena cava, and this connection is known as ductus venosus. This is also a normal finding in the fetal circulation, but if found in the adult circulation or after birth, then this is considered to be an abnormality. So this connection is the ductus venosus. So till now we have discussed the 5 main structures. First was placenta and the umbilical cord. Then we saw the blood vessels. There are 2 umbilical arteries and 1 umbilical vein. Then we studied about the foramen ovale, then ductus arteriosus, and at last ductus venosus. So again, this is the fetal circulation, and to understand about the fetal circulation, you need to understand those 5 terms, because now I will be discussing this diagram. This is the placenta and the umbilical cord. The red color which you see here is the umbilical vein, and the blue colored vessels are the umbilical arteries. Since the umbilical vein is carrying the oxygenated blood, so it will be entering the fetus. And now come to this diagram. See the first point, the blood arrives via the umbilical vein. Then this arrives into the liver and gives a branch to the portal vein, and only about 1/3 of the blood reaches the inferior vena cava. Rest 2/3 of the blood goes to the liver. So liver is the main organ or the first organ that gets an extensive supply of oxygenated blood. So here this connection is ductus venosus, the connection between the umbilical vein and the inferior vena cava. Now this inferior vena cava has reached into the right atrium, and from here the superior vena cava is also bringing the deoxygenated blood. Then you can see this arrow. This is pointing towards the foramen of ovale. It means that most of the blood is going directly into the left atrium, and only some amount of blood is coming down into the right ventricle. Then from this right ventricle, the blood is going into the pulmonary artery, and from the right atrium the blood is going down into the left ventricle and then to the aorta. And here between the aorta and the pulmonary artery there is again a connection, and this connection is your ductus arteriosus. This connects the aorta with the pulmonary artery, further shunting the blood away from the lungs and into the aorta. Since here the involvement of lung is not there, that is why the blood cannot go to the lungs. So this is the connection that is there, so that if any blood is present inside the pulmonary artery, that directly goes into the aorta and can carry out the systemic circulation. So this is your fetal circulation. Now we are going to discuss it into parts. We are going to make the flowchart by dividing it into parts. So this one is the first part that we will be discussing. Then this box will be the second part, and this box will be the third part. Now we are starting with the first part. The first part was our placenta and the umbilical vein. So what will happen here? First of all, the placenta. From the placenta arises the umbilical cord. From the umbilical cord, one umbilical vein is there and 2 umbilical arteries are present. So in the umbilical cord, 1 umbilical vein is there and 2 umbilical arteries are present. Umbilical vein carries the oxygenated blood, whereas the umbilical arteries carry the deoxygenated blood. So this is about the first part of our fetal circulation, that from the placenta the umbilical cord arises, and the umbilical cord contains 2 things, 1 umbilical vein and 2 umbilical arteries. Then we are coming on to the next part, the next box. Then from the umbilical vein, this umbilical vein will give the supply to the 2 parts. Here you can see the umbilical vein is giving the supply of the blood to the 2 parts. One is the portal vein that is present in the liver, and the next is inferior vena cava. And this connection Between the umbilical vein and the inferior vena cava is the ductus venosus. You can see in this diagram, which we discussed earlier also, this is the umbilical vein and this is the inferior vena cava, and here the connection that is present is the ductus venosus. So this is how the ductus venosus will be formed and the blood will move on further to the inferior vena cava. Then from the inferior vena cava, the blood will go into the right atrium. You can see here in this diagram, from the inferior and the superior vena cava, the blood is coming into the right atrium. Then from the right atrium, it has two paths, either to go into the right ventricle or to go in the left atrium, and this will be because of the presence of foramen ovale. Since the foramen ovale is present here, that is why the blood from the right atrium will go into the left atrium. This was the structure that I had already shown you. This is the presence of the foramen ovale, which allows the passage of blood from the right atrium into the left atrium. So these are the two pathways which the blood from the right atrium can follow. Then the third structure. Here the right atrium and the right ventricle and the right atrium we are taking into consideration. From the right ventricle, the blood can go into the pulmonary artery, and from the left atrium, the blood can go into the left ventricle. You can see here, from this right atrium, the blood can come into the right ventricle, and then from right ventricle it will go to the pulmonary artery, and from the left atrium it can come into the left ventricle. Then from the pulmonary artery and from the left ventricle, both of these will join into the aorta. Here you can see this is the pulmonary artery. It also joins with the aorta, and this is the left ventricle. From here the aorta originates. So the connection between the pulmonary artery and the aorta is known as ductus arteriosus. So this is the connection. This is the connection between the pulmonary artery and the aorta, that is known as ductus arteriosus. So here we have come across all the three terms: foramen ovale, ductus arteriosus and ductus venosus. This was the structure of the ductus arteriosus, a connection between the pulmonary artery and the aorta. Now, after the aorta, where will this blood go and how will it come back into the circulation in the placenta? So you can see here, this is the whole fetal circulation in another kind of picture. This is the aorta, then one branch of aorta, that is the descending aorta, is coming down. Now we will see how this blood will come back into the placenta. From the aorta, the blood will come into the descending aorta. Then from the descending aorta, it will enter into the internal iliac artery. From the internal iliac artery, it will form two arteries, right internal iliac artery and the left internal iliac artery. You can see here this yellow portion, this is the descending aorta, which is bifurcating to form the internal iliac arteries. This one is the right internal iliac artery and this is the left internal iliac artery. Then the right internal iliac artery and the left internal iliac artery will form the umbilical arteries. You can see in this diagram at the bottom, the internal iliac arteries are forming the umbilical arteries. So both the internal iliac arteries, right and left, will form the umbilical artery, and these two umbilical arteries will enter into the umbilical cord, which we saw in the second picture, that was the blood vessels in the umbilical cord. I told you that there are two umbilical arteries. So where are these two umbilical arteries coming from? These two umbilical arteries are coming from the right internal iliac artery and the one from the left internal iliac artery. Then they will enter into the umbilical cord, and this umbilical cord will further meet up with the placenta to give away the deoxygenated blood for the process of oxygenation. And where is this oxygen received to the placenta? From the maternal circulation or from the mother. So, so now when you are looking at this picture, now after understanding about the fetal circulation, now this picture will be very easy to understand, that how the fetal blood circulation is occurring from the placenta to the liver, then to the heart, then again coming back to form the umbilical arteries and ending up at meeting with the placenta. So this is about the fetal circulation. Now one last thing that we all must know, that what are the afterbirth changes, afterbirth changes or the postnatal changes in the fetal circulation. This is the fetal heart. This is the fetal heart and this is the newborn heart. I told you that all these openings which are present there are normal for the fetal heart but not for the newborn heart. They need to be closed for the proper functioning during the postnatal period. So, this foramen ovale which was open during the fetal heart circulation, now after the birth or in the newborn heart, this foramen ovale gets closed and this is known as fossa ovalis. This structure turns out to be known as fossa ovalis. And this is the ductus arteriosus that was open during the fetal circulation. Now this structure will be known as ductus arteriosus and now this is closed. So this is about the afterbirth changes or the postnatal changes in the fetal heart circulation and in the newborn heart circulation. I hope that this topic is clear to you, and one suggestion I would like to give you, that the flowchart which I have discussed, it would be very nice if you try to make it on your own. Study from this video and if you want, then copy the flowchart and then try to understand the flowchart on your own. Then this fetal circulation you will be never able to forget. So this was all about the fetal blood circulation. Hope you liked the video and do subscribe and like for the coming up videos. Thank you.